Hello guys and welcome to today's Los Blancos podcast. Today we will be doing some more transfers and we will also be doing a Sevilla preview. So without further ado, join us after this short interval. Okay, so the first part of today's podcast, we will begin with some transfers and looking at the transfers. Now, this has become a regular occurrence on the podcast where we just discuss some of the transfer rumours that have been linked to Real Madrid. So, without further ado, let's begin. So, I think a good place to start is probably one of the strongest links, and that is with Antonio Rudiger. Now, I'm personally not a big fan of this move due to the many uncertainties with this move, but I can see why people would like it because we all know Antonio Rudiger is a very, very aggressive centre-back who's really good on the ball and, just dispossessing opponents. He's one of the best in the world, and I think last season with Chelsea under Thomas Tuchel it proved that. So do you think Antonio Rudiger would be a good signing for Real Madrid, especially on a free?
I think that he will be a good signing in terms of his quality and what he brings in relation to Alaba. I think he can complement Alaba well. I think, like you said, he's an aggressive centre-back. He's good on the ball. I think if Alaba isn't there, then I think that could hugely affect Real Madrid progression from deep in the centre-back position. So I think signing Rudiger can definitely do that. I think he would definitely be a bit more aggressive, similar to Ramos and Varane partnership where Alaba can cover him and he can be the aggressive. He can actually be the aggressive defender, But I think that the money to sign them, it might just be a bit too much. And actually, you actually told me a few months. I think it's a few months back that he's best in a back three, which Real Madrid do not utilize. And under Ancelotti, I don't think that we are going to utilize the back three. So I think that's a bit concerning because a player needs to understand that they can perform in a back four and a back three because of the importance of flexibility in the team in case of injuries, etc. So that's a bit concerning that he may struggle in the back four. Under Frank Lampard, he was actually dropped for maybe half a season and barely featured. There were many reports that he was going to Tottenham. So that's actually a big jump that he improved and did well. However, like you said, that's in the back three, But however, I think he's better than Nacho. I think he's better than Jesus Vallejo. So definitely he would improve the defense. However, I think he's asking for, I think it's 270 a week. Is it 270?
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah, and obviously, I don't think that if we are going to commit high salaries to, of course, Mbappe and offer Vinicius a new contract, I don't know. Obviously, the Erling Haaland situation it changes all the time, so I don't know about that. But if we're going to commit high wages to these players, then maybe committing it to a centre back who is likely to play backup because I would like Adam Militao to continue his partnership with Alaba. He's a young centre back and is getting better, so I don't think that there is a need to change that. I think if we're signing a centre back, they shouldn't displace the Militao Alaba partnership, but there should be a better centre back than Nacho and Vallejo.
Yeah, I've obviously watched Chelsea for most of my life, every week. One thing I've seen, over them long many managers that Chelsea usually have, is that he's struggled since his move since Roma. because he was obviously accommodated by Antonio Conte, and that went okay. He was starting most weeks. He did well. He didn't do it exceptional. You couldn't link him with Real Madrid at that time. You couldn't say, he was anywhere near Real Madrid's quality at that time. But the following years under Frank Lampard, he really struggled in a back four because, I think his defensive flaws are covered in a back three where he can make a mistake once in a while. It was in one of Tuchel's first games, or it was either one of Lampard's final games as Chelsea manager, where he scored a really ridiculous own goal against Sheffield United, and I think that shows his defensive flaws and that he can make mistakes. I think next to him, when you have players like Aspilicueta who can be great players, who are good at recovering and all of that, I think his flaws are covered because of it. And when we're talking about the kind of money that he wants, it's a lot of money, and it's maybe a big risk, to go in for a guy of his stature, who hasn't done brilliantly for Lampard, hasn't done brilliantly for Conte, but has done it for Tuchel. Now, in terms of whether he can fit in the back four with Alaba, he's very good on both feet. That's one thing that has to be said. His weak foot is very strong, and that means playing him left centre back isn't too much of a problem. So that might benefit us in the long term if we want to maybe push Alaba to the left, if we want some more attacking ability from left back instead of maybe Mendy. So that could benefit us in terms of options. But if we're paying that kind of money for options, I don't think, I think we're going to get onto a player later on who is my pick to become Real Madrid's long-term centre-back. But I just don't think paying that kind of 270k per week is just not good enough for an option. So should we move on now to, I would say let's move on to his Chelsea teammate, Mason Mount. Now, Mason Mount, we've had small links with him. It's not giant links. I've just seen links on OneFootball. I've seen that he is Juventus as well as us are interested. Now, one of them, he was Chelsea's best player last season, which has to be said, and he scored the goal against us in this Champions League semi-final. That damned us. So we all know his qualities. I think he's a great presser off the ball, and his work rate is very, very good. So that may benefit us if we're gonna. So next season we might buy Haaland and Mbappe, and if we're gonna do that, we're gonna need a working hard midfield where Mason Mount might come into that, and he's a fantastic off the ball presser. He's learned that off with Tuchel, and he even had that with Lampard. So I think Mason Mount would be a fantastic play. In terms of money, we're talking big amounts. Chelsea ain't going to be wanting to let go of their star boy very easily. So what do you think on Mason Mount?
Before I get into how realistic it is to sign Mason Mount, and maybe if it is true that he can come to Madrid, I must actually say that this is a talented player and he can fit in at Madrid. He is also a good presser, like you said. He's good on the ball. He can pick a pass. If you look at the pass, the Kai Havertz, the Champions League final, and his intelligence to get in that space, make that pass. Of course, if you look at the game where Chelsea knocked us out on last day, he was incredible. He and Kante and Kai Havertz was so good in that midfield. It was such a high-intensity game. They took control of Madrid. And as much as it was sad and disappointing to see us lose that game, I'm sure that many people who love football, even if you're a Madrid fan, you can say, you know what, Chelsea deserved to win that game because they totally outplayed us, and he was so important to that Mount, Havertz, and Kante. And I actually did think to myself, he was fitting well at Madrid alongside. He can complement Toni Kroos, he can complement Luka Modric. But actually, I actually think if Real Madrid need to sign an attacking midfielder, a versatile midfielder, I think he's a perfect midfielder for Madrid. However, before I get into, like I said, how realistic it is, I'm going to ask you a question. Uh, do you think that Mason Mount can actually like complement Toni Kroos and Modric and their style of play? Because I actually think that he can actually.
Yeah, we also know that Mason Mount is a very quick player. He's quick and he's good on the ball, and I think I think playing a midfield three of them lot, I don't think is a great idea with them three. But I think they can if it's just one of them, maybe Kroos or maybe a Modric at one a time. I think he's a good player. I think Casemiro needs to be in there if we're going to play in midfield. But I think, in terms of pace and athleticism, I think he's a fantastic player and it can really help Real Madrid, because I think that Real Madrid have lacked that midfielder who's box to box, and Valverde's brought that, but he's obviously had injury after injury, which is not good to see. Now I think Mason Mount could be that player. As he gets older, maybe his ability in front of goal is going to improve a lot, and even now it's so obvious that he's fantastic in front of goal. He's been compared to Foden and who was it? Foden and Sancho quite a lot, and Grealish. So they're all being compared, for the England national team. We're talking about, who should start in that attacking midfield slot, and Mason Mount has come out with that quite a lot of times, and I think he's been favoured by Gareth Southgate as the main attacking midfielder because he's so hard working, and I think if we're going to play the likes of Mbappe and Haaland up top, we need the type of midfielders like Camavinga, like Mount, like Valverde. Now, as you said, there's got to be something said about the realism of this, and it's just not very likely because this is Chelsea's star boy, and he is probably, regarded as by Chelsea fans as the next Lampard, and they don't want that to go away very easily. And I don't think Mason Mount would be very interested in Real Madrid either, because we know he's a Chelsea fan, but he's not a Chelsea fan, he's a Portsmouth fan. But he came through the youth ranks at Chelsea, and he's going to grow an affinity for that club. So I think in terms of that, there's not much chance of it happening. So yeah, what do you think on the actual realistic expectation on Mason Mount joining Real Madrid?
Yeah, like you said, Chelsea care about this player a lot. Now the player considers Chelsea to be his home. I think if he wants more money, I think Chelsea will just give him more money, because he's actually one of their most important players, not just now but for the future. So I think the report says that he's unhappy with the amount that he's making at this time. Chelsea will offer him the money. So I don't think that this will happen. Of course, it will be good if it does, because he's such a talented player. So, of course, this is highly unlikely, and hypothetically speaking, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think that if you can sign Mason Mount and you can give up one of Toni Kroos and Luka Modric, I'm not talking about their peak, but give up one like right now at their ages, 36 and 31 or 32. I'm not too sure how old Toni. I think it's 32 at this time. Will you give up one of them to sign Mason Mount? If, for example, hypothetically speaking, you can get Mason Mount, but one of Toni or Luka has to leave, will you do it? Because personally for me, I would do it. I know that it sounds kind of crazy. However, I think Mason is a lot younger, and he's there for the future as well. Because I think if you look at the 2014-2015 season, I'm not too sure if you remember when we sold Xabi Alonso, I think that we just signed Toni Kroos, and of course we struggled to adapt a bit, but in the long term, I think it worked out well. And when we sacrificed Xabi Alonso after the signing of Toni Kroos, I know that, however, it's unlikely that we sign Mason Mount. However, if we have that opportunity, would you take that opportunity?
Of course I would, because he's just, he's regarded by Chelsea fans as generational talent. I wouldn't go that far, but I think he's a fantastic player. I would take him over Modric at this time because of Modric's age. Doesn't mean I'll chop Modric from the team entirely, but I think in terms of what we're losing to get Modric or Cruz off and get Mount on, I think, we've got to make that jump eventually. And if that jump is made from Modric to Mason Mount, I think it's going to be a lot easier to make that jump. So let's move on to the next player, Philipp Lienhardt. Plays for Freiburg, obviously old Castilla talent. I've watched a few of Freiburg's games this season, or Freiburg, I don't know how to pronounce it. And, they've played against Bayern and they've had an extraordinary start to the season, it must be said. Only losing one game, and that was against Bayern Munich, which you can't really fault them for. And they even put up a good fight against them. And I think Philipp Lienhardt has been a really good player for them this season as one of the main centre backs. So I think he's a really good player. He's a solid player, which must be said. And I think Freiburg continue and they get Europe this season. I'm not sure they can get Champions League football, and I'm not sure how long this run can last for. But I think if they can get European football, I think that's going to put a lot of heads up for Philipp Lienhardt, because him and Freiburg have had one of the best defences in the Bundesliga this season, and he scored 3 goals from corners and other player. So I think he's been very, very good this season. So would you take Philipp Lienhardt over Vallejo or Nacho?
Yeah, I think the good thing about Lienhardt is that he actually plays for an important role for his national team as well, alongside Alaba in centre back. So sometimes Alaba would move to left back or midfield, but it doesn't matter. I think that he actually is a solid defender, like you said. I think he's better than Vallejo. I think in relation to Nacho, I think that they're not the same player. They're quite different, so that's actually a one positive. And I think he can definitely be a solid addition. And I've always said, if you're signing a player and he's better than the options that you have, I think that you should take it. However, it has to be for the right amount of money, because I don't think that he would be a player to drastically change and make significant changes to our defensive style of play and make us way better. He can definitely be a solid addition. So, for example, if you get him for maybe cheap, I think you can explore the opportunity of signing him. But I don't think that he's good enough, for Madrid to totally go out of their way to sign him for. He's a solid addition. He is better than Vallejo. He can potentially be a better fit than Nacho in the future, because of course Nacho is in his 30s now. But personally, I don't think that he's good enough, for Madrid to go out of their way to sign him.
Yep. So let's move on to our next player, Luis Enrique of Fluminense. Now, there's quite a few of those players he's got the same name as many other Luis Enriques, but he's a really special talent for Fluminense, because he's one of those players who we can say that he's not exactly the flair player like Vinicius, but he's more better. He's got better output than most of these Brazilian wingers that just come out of these Fluminense academies, of Flamengo, of Palmeiras, of Grêmio Internacional. All of these academies produce players like him. And I think, this season, 38 appearances, 6 goals, 2 assists. It's good. It's a good output. He certainly has to improve that. That's, there's no question about it, especially if he's in the Brazilian league, which, is not exactly the best of quality, even though it's very, very competitive. It's not the best of quality. He's got good dribbling. He's good in the air. He's 5'11". He's very hard-working, which has to be said. And I think, that's shown in his tackles this season, which is 1.5 tackles per game. So he's putting on the pressure. I watched some highlights reels of him. He looks like a really good player. I think if we buy him next season, he could be one of those players where we just bring him on in the latter stage of the game where we're trying to close him out, and he'll just work hard for us. So what do you think on Luis Enrique?
I think that he is a talented player, like you said. I've seen a bit of pieces of him, not much, to make a total analysis. However, the issue is I haven't seen much of him, but in terms of when Madrid are signing Brazilian talent, I don't think that all of the time that they actually analyze the player and how he can contribute. I think they see a lot of talent and potential and explore the signing. I don't think that Madrid, actually go on a total analysis of what this player can contribute, similar to what Jesus is going through right now. Jesus, I think he will struggle to get into this team. And Madrid, you can see that Madrid just signed him, without a total plan, because with Vinicius and Rodrigo, they will not lose Vinicius and Rodrigo because they know that they are important pieces for Madrid. But in terms of Vania, it's clear that they just signed a talented player, without totally analyzing, what the player can contribute, or analyzing, how the player can stay in our first team. And I haven't seen much of Luis Enrique, but I hope that if we sign the player, it's not too much of money, because we have talented wingers in Vinicius and Rodrigo. Mbappe is the target as well. Asensio is still there, so it's a bit kind of technical and a bit weird if we sign another Brazilian winger. So personally, even though I haven't seen much of the player, do you think that he is better than Vinicius and Rodrigo? If he isn't, then I don't think that we should sign him, because I definitely think that because we are signing Mbappe, who can definitely fit here on either flank. Vinicius, who's playing on the left hand, hopefully he can the side as well as Rodrigo, who can play on both wings. I don't think that there's a need for another winger. Even if Asensio struggles and we sign Mbappe, Vinicius and Mbappe don't need to be rotated too much, as well as Rodrigo. So I don't think there'd be a total need for him. And I think we were speaking a few weeks back, and we were actually quite excited about the Real Madrid right wingers in terms of Peter and Sergio Arribas, and that's talented young players who can definitely come on and work hard when they get better, maybe in 1 year, 2 years time. So I think I don't think that we should sign him if he isn't better than Vinicius or Rodrigo. And I don't think that he is. Although I haven't seen much of the player, it's difficult for me to make that analysis, and maybe you can make that analysis for me, because I just don't think that Madrid should go after the signing if he isn't going to be better than Vinicius or Rodrigo.
I think that he is better than Reinier Jesus at his age currently. It's a difficult one, because Fluminense aren't going to be asking as much as Flamengo, because simply Flamengo are the bigger club, and Fluminense currently are probably worse financially than Flamengo. So there will be a lot less of an outlay for Luis Enrique. We're talking 10 to 15 million, and I think 10 to 15 million, we're talking about a small risk. I think we might as well go for it, because with Reinier it was 30 million, and that was a big risk. With Vinicius and Rodrigo, let's not even say anything about that, because that was a huge risk at that time. 50 million for two unknown players. With Luis Enrique, I just don't think there's too much of a downside to it. I think that he's a good player, which must be said, but one thing is he's not special. I don't think you can find this anywhere in the favelas of Brazil. This kid, he's not exactly. We're not talking about some of the we're not talking about generational talents. Neymar. We're not talking about Vinicius. We're not talking about anyone like that. We're talking about a guy who's he's good, but whether he can get to that top level, it's a questionable. But I think a few loans. And I think, if we take the Chelsea way of thinking, whereas, bring in a young player, loan them out a few times, increase their value, and then sell them on. I think he could be a good profit-making player. So he's a good player. Whether he's Real Madrid standard, it remains to be seen. I think he needs to do one more good season where he improves on this season from Fluminense. So good luck to him. Let's move on to our next player. Now this is a player I have seen. This is a player who I'm really excited about. I hope he does not go to Barcelona because he is a fantastic player. It's Julian Alvarez of River Plate. I do watch River Plate every once in a while, and every single time I watch River Plate, he is the best player on the pitch because he's just so good. 18 appearances this season with 17 goals and 5 assists. He can play attacking midfielder, he's a striker, and he's a right winger. He is so good. Wherever he plays, he is fantastic, and his ability to cut inside or just take it on his right and just smash it past the keeper, near post. It's frightening how good he is in front of goal. And I think, as I just said, 22 goals and assists from 18 appearances. We're talking about a guy who's really clinical. And what must be said is that he has played for Real Madrid before. He was in the youth system. He was under 14, I believe it was. He was playing for Real Madrid. So I think, he knows Real Madrid very, very well. And I think he is River Plate's next big hope. And I think he's Argentina's next big hope. I think he's a bigger talent than Lautaro Martinez. I think, in terms of Argentina, this is the best player we've seen come out of Argentina since Sergio Aguero. So, what do you think on Julian Alvarez?
Yes, I have to actually go on and follow your path and give the player a lot of compliments because he is talented, technical player. There's not much more I can add to it. I definitely think that we should sign him. However, I think if we sign him, not on him, I think we'd have to definitely sell Jovic and definitely sell Mariano. I think that should be the end of the line for these players. And actually, I must admit that he can definitely be a backup, to Benzema. I think players like him, versatile players who are strikers, can definitely be the kind of players to back up Benzema because not only can they back up Benzema, but they can also play alternative positions, compared to Benzema, they're not just a strictly a number 9. So I definitely think that he would be a good addition to Madrid. Yes, like you said, he was there previously. So if we can sign the player, I think he would be a good addition. And I didn't see any reports. When I read the articles, I think I saw 30 million. Is that true, or was it a bit more or less?
I believe he has a £25 million release clause in his contract.
Yeah, okay, yes, I know it was maybe about 30 close to that. So I definitely think that's actually not bad at all. I think there's a huge upside to it. I think that he can definitely contribute a lot. So I hope that, and the good thing about him, I don't think that the other clubs other than the Spanish giants are interested in him compared to like Adeyemi, who's another young talented player who may not come to Madrid because of the amount of clubs that are interested in him and maybe can offer him a better project in terms of game time, etc. I think that Madrid can easily persuade Julian to come to the club. Of course, I think that he can maybe see a pathway for young talented forwards now because of Vinicius and Rodrigo, how important they are. So definitely, I think that he's a talented player. And if we can sign him, definitely.
Okay, so let's move on to the next player. We're not going to spend much time on him. It's Donny van der Beek. This report came out a few weeks ago. Now it seems a bit expired because of the fact that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is gone, and now Michael Carrick is in, and potentially Ralf Rangnick is going to come in as well. So it looks like his play time is going to be improved. I personally think he's a better option than Pogba, but let's not spend too much time on him. Let's move on to the last player in the list, which is Wesley Fofana. Now, I talked about a different centre-back from Rudiger earlier on. Wesley Fofana is my pick because he's come out many times saying that Real Madrid is his dream. Real Madrid is his dream. He wants to play for Real Madrid one day, and I think he's just such a perfect centre-back to partner Militao in the future. I think he's literally the guy. He is the guy for Real Madrid. So, what do you think on Wesley Fofana?
Yeah, definitely. And I think he is actually a talented player. He's also good on the ball. He's also he can also put in a tackle. He's good in making interceptions. He's quick. He's fast, and that's important in terms of defending. And I must actually say that personally for me, I think the long-term plan for Madrid is to play Alaba in midfield when Toni Kroos and Luka Modric eventually retires. I strongly believe that that Alaba may have an opportunity to stake his claim in midfield in the future. And I think that why Madrid are interested in Fofana and potentially Koundé, because I think they know that alongside Militao they will have a solid backline actually. So maybe if we sign Fofana, he can be the long-term partner to Militao, allowing Alaba to play multiple positions. I think that's my prediction. And of course, I think Alaba may have asked for potentially playing in midfield in the future. Not now, obviously, because of Tony and Luka, of course. But I think maybe that can be an option. But in terms of Fofana, I think he's, like I said, good in interception, good in making a tackle. He's a smart defender as well. So I think he would be a good addition. I think he's just returning from injury, so I hope that he comes back healthy, and I hope that he can continue playing well, so that he can have the opportunity to be linked to Madrid again, in my opinion.
Yeah, okay, so that's the end of this section of the podcast. Join us after this short interval. Okay, so we've got our Sevilla preview. Today, the game is at 8 o'clock, which is British Meridian time. You can figure out when that is in your own time. When is it in Trinidad?
Well, and also in the United States and Canada, etc., Eastern Central Time, it will be at 3 o'clock, 3 p.m. in the Caribbean sport.
Okay, so so we're playing Sevilla. Big game we're talking about here. We're talking about a game that could, define the season for us. Because this is the game that we're playing first against third. Sevilla have had a fantastic season so far. They're looking to capitalise on, some tired legs from Real Madrid. They've played midweek and they did well against Wolfsburg midweek in the Champions League, but they've lost a few men. Jules Koundé is out, Diego Carlos is out, Lucas Ocampos is out, and Jesus Navas was already out because he had a long-term injury. So basically, this is what their starting 11 is going to look like, probably. Goalkeeper will be Bono, right back will be Gonzalo Montiel, centre-backs will be Karim Rekic, and the other centre-back will be a makeshift Fernando, left-back Acuna, in the middle will be Thomas Delaney, and the other two centre-mids will be Ivan Rakitic and Joan Jordan. Right winger will be most likely Eric Lamela. Up front will be Rafa Mir or Yusuf El Nesri. And left wing will be Papu Gomez. So it's a very strong 11, even if the two centre-backs are missing and Lucas Ocampos. In terms of how we're going to stop them, they're very great at counter-attacks. So, that could be used against Real Madrid because of our defensive, woes, especially when the opposition is attacking with pace. So we've got to be careful there. But I think, what's holding them down is the lack of Lucas Ocampos, because I'm telling you right here, right now, is that he would be perfect in those counter-attacks. With Papu Gomez, maybe, it might slow them down a little bit. So that may not be so much of a problem, but that midfield, that can definitely pick up a pass, Rakitic and Joan Jordan. So let's start with our lineups. Goalkeeper, Courtois, as normal.
Okay, yes, of course, he's going to play.
Okay, right back, Carvajal, I assume.
Yes, of course. Ancelotti took up both fullbacks so that they can be rested for this game. So Carvajal and Mendy in fullback for me.
Yeah, okay. So Mendy is also my left back. Centre backs. Who have you gone for at the centre back position? Now we know that Alaba got a little bit of a knock in the Sheriff game. Carlos says it's nothing to worry about, but I would worry a little bit. For me, I've gone for Nacho and Militao, but who have you gone for?
Yeah, definitely. I would like to see Nacho and Militao in centre back as well, because I think Madrid have 7 games in 21 days and some big ones as well. So I think Ancelotti should look at the bigger picture and play Nacho and Militao, because Alaba is needed for defeating Madrid as well. So I would much rather we miss him for one game, or if we need some attacking contributions from deep later on, then we can bring him on. And he can feature for maybe 40 minutes, 30 minutes, but not 90. I think I don't want to risk anything. Of course, Carlo Ancelotti will be aware of the situation and how Alaba is feeling. But I would definitely be upset if he plays and he has to come off due to injury miss over a lengthy period. So I think we should go for Nacho and Militao. With the years in phase, I think that we can definitely afford to do so. Because I'm taking Sevilla lightly, but however, if you look at the schedule, I think it's the smart thing to do, despite how good Sevilla is.
Yeah, with the schedule we're talking about, next few games we're going to be playing Atleti, Real Sociedad, Inter, Athletic Bilbao, all in a short space of time. So I think we've got to take the player out here and now, because I think that in the long term, I think it's going to benefit us. It's going to benefit David Alaba with a little bit of a rest against Sevilla. I'd rather have him out for this game than to have him out for the rest of the games. So let's move on to the midfield three. Who have you gone for here?
I think this is where Carlo Ancelotti never really changes his team as much. Even if you go back 5 years, 6 years ago. I think he's going to stick with Casemiro, Kroos and Modric. I think the midfield has depth now because Fede Valverde is back alongside Camavinga as well. So I think if there's a need for change during the game, he can definitely make those changes. So I think because of the depth in midfield, there isn't like a strong need to rotate the team as much or rest of the players. So I think that maybe Modric can rest a bit, but I think he's going to stick to our midfield three.
Personally, I do want to rest Modric in this game, purely because I think that I want to see Camavinga in a big game, because we've seen him against those little teams. No disrespect to them, of course. Celta Vigo, Mallorca, all these little teams. Right, and we need to see him against a proper big team in Sevilla. So I think, personally, it's a perfect time to rest Modric, and I want to see Mr. Camavinga make an appearance today. I don't think it's right for Fede Valverde to come in yet. I think next game, probably, but not this game. I think just coming back for injury, maybe a 10-minute cameo, that would be all right towards the end if we need to just get some energy and some fresh legs out. But I think, in my opinion, I think this should be a game where we should rest Modric. And I think, especially against that midfield, I think we need some athleticism. If we want to contain Rakitic and Jordan, I think we need Camavinga to get up and down, all that pitch. I think this would have been a perfect game for Fede Valverde to start, but I don't think he is fit enough to do so. So, front three, who have you gone for?
Because Navas is injured, I definitely think Vinicius Jr. can definitely take control of the game on his left wing position. And I'm definitely Totti the Sevilla fullback. However, I think that Vinicius hasn't been himself for the past 2 games. I think that maybe the Vinicius can definitely make a better impact on this game coming off the bench. And of course, he needs maybe a bit of rest as well, or maybe a few cameos, so to avoid any overloads or any injuries. Of course, he's young, not to say that he isn't tired. However, for this game, I would like to see Rodrigo and Asensio play. Asensio didn't play in week much during the week, so I think he can be fit to play 90 minutes. Rodrigo, he just came out from an injury, so I think Rodrigo, he played, I think, 80 minutes during the week. I think maybe if you can get 60 out of him, not cause any injuries, 60 minutes, and then maybe bring on Vinicius for the final 30. I think that would be the ideal game management for me. And of course, up front, Benzema has to play. I think we can play Benzema if we are winning. Then, of course, even if we are winning 1-0, we need to take off Benzema because we can actually bring on hard-working Mariano or Jovic, of course, to see out the game. Because if we are leading, then I think that's what's important. I would definitely take up Benzema if it's 1-0. So I would go for not Vinicius, I should go Benzema and Asensio. And of course, I would like to see Vinicius in the second half.
Personally, I don't think it's a game to rest Vinicius. I don't think any of these coming games are games to rest Vinicius because we're talking about the run that will make or break our season. If we lose 4 or 5 of these games, the season's finished basically. So I think we've got to play Vinicius in these coming games and Benzema as well. On that right wing, I think it should be Asensio. I think, in terms of Acuña's great going forward, but, he's a bit slow and he's not exactly the best defensively. So I think, there will be a match there with Asensio. If we need to, we can bring on Rodrigo later on in the game to try and torment Acuña in terms of pace. But I think, to start with, I think Asensio should be starting. In terms of the right back, we're talking about one of the best one-on-one fullbacks in the league in Gonzalo Montiel. And sure, he's not as good going forward as Jesus Navas, but I think, in terms of actually containing the left winger, I think Montiel's probably going to have better chances of that than many other players in the league. So I think we've got to be careful with Montiel because he's actually a very good fullback, and I tipped him for a Real Madrid transfer in the summer when we were talking about 380 signings. I remember, and I tipped Gonzalo Montiel to sign for Real Madrid. He ended up signing for Sevilla. He hasn't played all too much this season due to Jesus Navas being in such great form like he always is. But I think Montiel is a fantastic player, and I think he will show why. I think Vinicius will just about get the better of him, but we've got to be ready there. So, have you got anything else to say about Sevilla before we end the podcast today?
Well, not much about Sevilla. Just one quick point before we end it. I don't think it's about resting Vinicius. I think it's best that Vinicius plays 30 minutes so he can fit here from the start in the other matches as well. So against Bilbao and against Sociedad, and then fit here off the bench against Inter and again. Because I think, of course, he had a slow start against Granada. He is a bit quiet against Sheriff. And maybe that can be due to maybe a bit of fatigue, However, I think that if he can be fresh for the second half, I think he will be a bit more dangerous. Because I think if he did in every game from the start since the first 2 games for the season. So I just think that maybe it's not, resting Vinicius due to taking the game lightly. I think it's just that he may contribute better off the bench for the final 30 minutes for this game than into the lineup for the next 2. Because I don't think that he can play from the start 7 matches in 21 games. I don't think I think Benzema will have to do it. I think we have no choice but to allow Benzema to get through these phases of play because I think he's a striker that he won't have much running than Vinicius, even though he works hard. However, in terms of Vinicius, I think you have to actually trust Rodrigo and Asensio to get the job done in this one. I would predict a 3-1 win, and I would hope that I wouldn't be surprised if Vinicius starts. I think it's the better option to do in terms of playing football and the best way to win the game. But I was just thinking maybe in the next few games that maybe he can defeat you. off the bench, but I would have no say if he starts because Carlo Ancelotti knows the player. He says the player isn't tired. I'm sure that the experts, the medical experts, would analyze the situation. So if the players, like I've always said this, if the players can play and they're fit to go and the player wants to play, the coach wants them on the field, there's no risk to an injury, then we should play them. We should play our best 11 all as much as possible if we can, if it's smart and we can fit here without any injuries, without any potential injuries. So let's see how it goes, and I think that we are good enough to overcome Sevilla, and I would actually go for a 3-1 win. What would be your score?
Just before I give my prediction, I think this was the game where we lost the title last year. So, and I think that was due to Vinicius's miss, where it was such brilliant play for Cruz Modric. So he's going to be wanting to get a little bit of revenge for that. Let's hope he can show it. I personally think that our defence will cost us this game. I don't think we'll lose because of our attack. I think it'll be 2-2 in the end. Let's hope we can win, because I definitely think we can win because of the injuries that Sevilla obviously have. So I think that could get us the win, but I think Lopetegui will be fired up to try and get the win against his old side. So yeah, that's the end of today's podcast. Thank you guys for listening, as of always, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.